So in last video, we already talked about how we can create this basis function specifically for polynomial linear regression models. For each x, we need to find out x raised to the power order of the model. So x raised to the power j for each supplied x and j. We already created a Python method where we are supplying x and where we are supplying some m for it, and as a result it is creating x raised to the power supplied m, and it is returning that specific value. So we have already created this method in Python. In this video we will try to implement a functionality, a method which will create the phi value of a given x. So prior to going further into the detail, I want to talk about once again about the model itself. So we have model means this y, and this y is a function of supplied x, means x is a scalar value. For each new x, value of y would be this one, where w naught is the bias, and the next parameter, the next thing of this equation is w1 x raised to the power 1. Because this is a polynomial model, so we are talking about x raised to the power number of order of the polynomial. For example, we have order of the polynomial which is m, and the equation means this model would be w naught multiply x raised to the power 0, because there is something hidden here, plus w1 x raised to the power of 1, w2 x raised to the power 2, and at the same time wm x raised to the power m. If we make compact form of this formula, what we are getting, we are getting wt and phi of x. So what is wt here? This wt is nothing but a matrix of the unknown coefficient. So we have unknown coefficient w0, w1, w2, wm. So the matrix means the capital W which we are having here, the transpose of w. So w itself would be something like w0, w1, w2, and at the same time wm. This is the matrix which we are having here, wt, and this w is the output which we are getting after training this model. We have already talked about this is how we will get w. This is latter part of this video. This wt we already know what it is. Now if we talk about this phi of x, this is again is a matrix, right? This phi x. So for each x, go back to the equation. So we have x naught x raised to the power 0, x raised to the power 1, then x raised to the power 2, and at the same time x raised to the power m. So this phi x, if we specifically talk about it, is again is a matrix, and this matrix would be x raised to the power 0 starting from 0, the first element, then the second element is x raised to the power 1, third element is x raised to the power 2, and the last element is x raised to the power m. In this video we will try to implement Python function where we will supply this x to this function, right? And we will supply m to this function, and this function will return us this matrix for supplied x and m, right? This is what our agenda in next couple of minutes in this video. So let's quickly jump into the coding part of it. So we will create a func method in Python. As you already know, we have a method which is returning us the power value of supplied x according to the power itself, which is I, right? Now we will create a method which will return us the phi value of supplied x, right? The matrix which is containing different elements starting from x raised to the power 0 to 1 to 2, and then x raised to the power m in supplied order. Let's comment here. So the we call it phi of x, and what this x would be, phi of x would be a matrix, and this matrix will contain the first element which is x raised to the power 0, which is ultimately 1. Second element would be x itself, which we are supplying because it is x raised to the power 1. At the same time, third element would be x raised to the power 2, and in the same way we will have the final element which is x raised to the power m, right? This is what we are going to do, and m here is the model, order of the model. Let's call it the name of the function. Every time we are creating some function in Python, we need to use this statement which is def. The name of the function would be phi of x. Let's call it phi of x, because every time whenever we wanted to create this matrix, we need two different input, which is x, the value of x, and the order of the polynomial. So let's call value of x, we call it x, and the order of the polynomial we call it m. For example, we need some functionality which create this x raised to the power 0, then 1, means this total function will return us this matrix. So the very first thing we need to do, we need to make a functionality which will create this 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, and at the same time then m, and we can supply this value back to this function along with the x value. And because every time we are supplying this I and x, it will return us x raised to the power I. So the very first thing we need to do, we need to get some functionality which will to get 0 starting from 0 and then 1 and then 2. So the very first thing we need to do, we need to use for loop for this purpose. For element, let's call it power. For power in, we have a method in Python which is range, and what this range will do, it will ask us two different argument here. First argument, from where you wanted to create this range and what would be the number of the elements in this range. So we want to create from 0 because we want first element, we want 0, and we want till m. In first execution of this line, in power element we will get 0, then in second execution we will get 1, at the same time 3 4 5 till m. So ultimately we are ready with the I value. We have x already. Let's name this variable current value and call this function, because every time we need to find out x raised to the power current value would be basis function, right? The function which we are having here, basis function, and to get value of the basis function we need to pass x. So we have x here, pass here x, and we need to pass what is the power you wanted to have. So we want to have power, we already have here, so let's call it power, right? This is what we are getting. In first run it will get value of the current, means the value we are getting in this variable would be x raised to the power, the means the variable which we are having. So it would be x raised to the power power. Let's change this name because it is creating some issue. Let's call it I, right? And it would be I. So I would be first execution of this loop, value of I would be 0. In second execution of this route, I value would be 1, and in the same way 2 3 4 5 until m. So when we are calling this method first time, basis function, what we are passing x, which we are getting from here, and I is the first value, means while executing this loop. So I would be 0 in first, so we are passing x and 0, right? And we are getting this value here. After getting this value, we need to create a matrix. We need to save this element to the matrix. So what we have to do, we have to create an array, right? Let's call it temp array. After getting first value from this method, what we have to do, we have to add this value into this array, right? So how to do it? We can again temp array and dot, we have a function which is append. It is appending elements back to this array. And what is the element we want to append? We want to append current value. Let's pass it here, right? So this is how in first run of this loop it will pass I equals to 0, in second one I equals to 1, and in the same way every time this current value would have a value in it, and this value will be saved into this array in temp array. And after completing this loop, we need to return, what we need to return? This temp array, because all the element will be saved into the temp array itself. This way we are actually getting a array, and this array will hold values starting x raised to the power 0, then 1, then 2 till m value which we are supplying to this method. Let's test it. So just make a variable which is test, and how to call this variable, this method, just use name here, and what we need to pass as x, what we can use for the demo purpose, let's call it 3. And what is the range order of the what is the order of this polynomial? So let's pass 6 here, and if I run this code, the whole code, what we will get, we are getting this test variable. So the first value is 3 raised to the power 0, because 3 is the x and raised to the power 0. This is 1. 3 raised to the power 1, which is 3. 3 raised to the power 3, 3 raised to the power 2, 9. In the same way, 3 raised to the power 3, then 4, then 5. This is how we are actually creating this array by using this function. I am very happy for you. You are not only understanding the basic fundamental of machine learning, but also you are learning this Python, means coding in Python, how we can create these methods and all these things. So thank you for watching this lecture. I will see you in next video.